Hello viewers, you're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Sese, and it's a pleasure to be back for your weekly State of Affairs program here on QTV Gambia. We are also broadcasting live on our YouTube channel and of course on Facebook at QTV Gambia. Well, the government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Finance, in September last year, inaugurated the State-Owned Enterprises Regulatory Commission, comprising 6 commissioners who are tasked to what the government said to unlock the hidden potentials and resources in these SOEs. Syndicated, the Gambia's Minister of Finance said the SOEs has an asset of $34 billion, yet asking for government financial support. I know he will be asking, but why? Well, joining us this week to discuss the Commission's mandate, current state of affairs of the SOEs, the Commission's anticipated outcome and challenges is nobody but Mr. Hussein Ngam, who is the chair of the newly established State-Owned Enterprises Commission. Mr. Ngam, good to have you on the State of Affairs program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sise. Good evening to you and your viewers, and it's my pleasure to be on the program this evening.
And by introduction, Mr. Ngam is a Gambian international development and financial expert. He is a chartered accountant with an MBA on change management. He has significant knowledge and experience in transformational change management in private, non-profit, and state-owned enterprises. Mr. Ngam has many years' experience in banking, education, and the airline industry. You wonder no reason why the government appointed him as a chair. He is a bilingual, speaks French and English, and currently working as an independent international consultant. Mr. Ngam, we know the commission has been established. Is it now in full operation?
Yes, Mr. Sise, we are in full operation as a commission, and as you clearly stated, the minister's position at the beginning was that government invests $34.5 billion in SOEs and is facing a situation where they're still subsidizing SOEs. Our task is to reverse that trend, progressively move them towards breaking even, and over time generate profits for government. And it's a very logical move by government. Currently, the government is running a budget deficit. In 2023, the budget deficit was 2.9% of GDP, which translates to roughly $5.6 billion. Now, in 2024, that deficit is projected to fall to 1.4%, which will translate to something in the region of 2.65 billion. Now, as a commission, we are confident we can move SOEs towards being the bridge to actually plug that hole and support and finance the deficit that government faces within its fiscal responsibility. So that is a huge task, but it is one that we are quite confident in our relationships with the SOEs, their boards, and the ministry, that we can forge a collaborative relationship to move them towards a profitable state.
I'm talking about the mandate. To be specific, what is the mandate of the commission? Do you have a time frame to say, okay, this is a commission established maybe for 2 years or 3 years? Just give us the foundation.
Sure.
Yeah.
The commission has a mandate of 3 years. Okay. Commissioners serve a mandate of 3 years, renewable once. Okay. So the maximum period we can spend as commissioners is 6 years. Now, the mandate of the commission is to act as the overseer of all SOEs. It basically performs a role of performing a fiduciary responsibility for government to ensure that the government's investment generates a return. Effectively, government is the shareholder, and the shareholder's responsibility has been vested on us to perform that role and ensure that the shareholder gets value. Now, obviously, by government being the shareholder, it means every Gambian, because we are the government, and therefore, our task is to ensure that SOEs generate a return for every Gambian.
So how do you do this? How do you carry out your mandate? What do you do?
We have several tools that we're using. The primary tool is to sign performance contracts with SOEs. Okay. Right. And those performance contracts are signed with set targets. Okay. So as every SOE signs a performance contract with us with set targets and indicators, so that we monitor those indicators together with the board of the SOEs. And if they deliver on those indicators, they are rewarded. If they don't deliver on those indicators, there are punitive measures in place to ensure that there is delivery. Okay. Government's intention is to ensure that people who are leading these SOEs deliver value for the nation. Okay. And we are tasked with ensuring that that happens.
So what are these indicators?
Now, it depends on the particular SOE. It will be indicators around service delivery. It will be indicators around financial management. It will be indications around staff training. It will be indicators around asset building, asset maintenance. So they vary depending on the SOE that we're dealing with. For example, if it were NAWEC, it would be, which is the one closest to every Gambian's heart, is to ensure that there is adequate electricity being supplied, there is adequate water being supplied, the supply is reliable, it's predictable, it's affordable, so on and so forth. And the same goes for other SOEs. It will be dependent on the service they offer. We will then set indicators to ensure that those services match the expectations of the population or the clientele whom they are serving.
And you talk about the punitive measures. What will it be?
Well, it could, the most extreme is to remove an entire board or to remove a management team, sliding down to probably warnings or things of that nature. Now, the idea is that we never get to that. That is the ultimate. What we wish to do is to create systems of accountability. The entire emphasis is on accountability, making sure that people who are given a responsibility are accountable and are able to say, I have delivered or I haven't delivered. Now, there may be several reasons why they haven't delivered. It need not necessarily be their own fault because we exist in a very dynamic environment. So our task is to sort of forestall and predict where there are likely to be problems and work with the management teams and the boards to ensure that we mitigate those. But the idea is to ensure robust accountability within state-owned enterprises because traditionally state-owned enterprises are not viewed as businesses as such, but they are. They deliver a service, but that service should be delivered in a manner that delivers a return for the investor. Because 34.5%, $34.5 billion is a significant amount. I mean, our global GDP is 188 billion. Yeah. So you do the maths. That's about 20% of GDP being invested. Now that's a significant chunk of our GDP, of the taxes we pay, and so on and so forth. So there should be accountability and a return from that. And our task really is to ensure that that return is delivered and pumped into the economy. Because, I mean, running a deficit runs a risk. And we therefore need to ensure that the systems that are working together to support the economy move towards pulling that deficit back.
So, I mean, when you talk about the SOEs, what are they? What are these SOEs?
SOEs are primarily state-owned enterprises. By that we mean they are institutions that are created for which their shareholding is most of the time 100% government-owned. Now, the idea behind SOEs are multiple. Service delivery is one, employment creation is another, skills transfer is another, but actually acting as an engine to drive the economy. Now, how does that happen? If you look at deposits today within the banking system, a significant chunk of bank deposits in this country is by SOEs. Now, deposit to lending in this country is pretty much around 20-25%. So there's a lot of liquidity in the economy that is not actually being used to deliver return and to cycle the economy and create wealth and create entrepreneurship. Now, if SOEs have good treasury management systems, they have robust treasury management systems, they can start investing in alternative tools that actually help the broader economy to turn. Now, our intention is to actually create that entrepreneurial spirit in a safe and secure manner, progressively, so that SOEs perform a much wider role than just service delivery. Because, you know, in any economy, you need an engine. Yeah. Now, private sector is a very, very powerful engine and is often the preferred engine for driving an economy. But in our particular context, the SOEs actually are pretty much at par with the private sector in terms of the level of deposits they put into the banking system and the type of wealth they generate. I mean, of significance is an SOE like Social Security. It is pretty much a pension fund. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go to the developed economies, most of the long-term investments are driven by pension funds. So there is an argument that we can work with Social Security to look more broadly at their investment portfolio and ensure that we are doing it in a way that supports the broader economy in several ways. And these are all things that we hope over time we can create an enabling environment for them to happen.
And when you look at all these issues, I mean, what will you point to as key issues that is affect or impacting the operations of these SOEs? Like you said, $34 billion is by no means a small amount being invested into these SOEs, yet they turn around and said, we need a bailout.
I mean, the problems are layered.
Okay.
There are issues of management. There are issues of interference here and there. Historically, SOEs have not been left alone to run independently. There have been interference by government. And these are all issues that we will ensure that in designing performance contract, we create independence for management teams. Create the confidence for SOE management to be able to say, no, if you want me to run a successful business, you have got to ensure that I have the basis to do so. These are things that we will do. Issues around where are they investing? What sorts of tools are they using? Do they have the right equipment? Do they have the right assets? Do they have the right staff? Do they have the right board? Are the right competencies around? Is there adequate oversight? Is there adequate mutual accountability within the SOEs and from ourselves to the SOEs and vice versa? Is government creating an enabling environment? Is it ensuring that appointments into SOE boards, appointment into SOE management teams are merit-based? People with competence, people with the integrity, people with the capacity to run these organizations. These are all issues that we will create the tools to ensure that the basis exists for the right people to be in the right places over time. And of course, I mean, we will ensure that that includes the bigger economy. Because, you know, we are an economy where we have 52% women and 48% men. But if you look at the composition of most of these SOEs today, it is significantly men-led, men-driven. Now, these are all things that we will look at and create strategies that are, of course, inclusive and participatory to get to a point where everybody in the economy has a stake in the bits that make the economy turn.
And you talk about issue of the management here. I mean, what do you find out as far as the issue of the management is concerned in these SOEs? Do you find the management to be incompetent or what?
No, I don't think management teams are incompetent. If you look at the complement of senior managers we have in SOEs, they're all highly qualified. They're all highly skilled. Now, competence is another issue. The ability to run organization is another issue. Oh. And what we will do is to ensure that there are systems of accountability to monitor performance, to monitor delivery, to monitor the leadership that you create. Okay. Because, you know, running an entity is all about leadership. You need to create an environment that is conducive, that is inclusive, that allows participation and mutual accountability. I mean, these are the issues. The issues are not around skill sets. We have very well-trained senior management teams. Okay. And what we need to ensure is that they have the right tools, they have the right environment, and that there is accountability all the way.
Earlier on, you mentioned about the issue of, you know, having performance contract. Already, we know the government has signed performance contract with some of the SOEs, including the social security. But do these, you know, contracts actually improve efficiency in your own?
That is the hope.
Okay.
That they improve efficiency, they improve performance, they improve accountability. Now, we are at a very early stage of performance contracts at the moment. The most recent ones were signed 2 years ago. Okay. Now, NAWEC did have a performance contract much earlier, but the most recent ones were signed 2 years ago. And they are in the process of being monitored. Okay. And there are significant exchanges. But what we want to do is not to create a police and being policed environment. We don't want to do that. Okay. We want to create a collaborative environment where really you have open, honest discussions about what's working and what's not working. And be able to deal with that in an open and transparent manner. So that if you get to a point where you are rewarding a management team because they have done well, it's quite clear why that has happened. If you are going the other way, it is also quite clear why that has happened. And there's adequate fairness, adequate openness, and adequate transparency. And that is the system that we are trying to put in place, so that it's an iterative process of constant discussion, negotiation, renegotiation. We set key performance indicators, but those are not cast in stone. If your context changes, if the environment changes, if the circumstances change, SOEs had always come back and say, no, we had committed to do X, Y, Z. Situation has deteriorated, it cannot happen. Or the market has so improved that we can do even better. Let us relook at this. I mean, that is our ultimate hope. Okay. Highly unlikely that anybody will come and tell you that, but that is really what we wish to see. So really, our task is to move away that responsibility from government. Because, you know, government is very bureaucratic and very onerous. So if you have ministries trying to oversee SOEs, then they move away from their key policy responsibility. Their primary responsibility is to set overarching policy of the national economy. The SOE's task is to deliver, to achieve those policy objectives. Now, our task is to marry the two. we are seated in a place where we understand the policy-making framework, but we also understand the operational delivery environment. So our task is to pull those two together to make sure that they work in a way that is not inhibiting SOEs. So SOEs don't have to worry about running to the ministry on a daily basis. Once the policy framework is set, it is our task to ensure that that policy expectation is delivered.
Are there different models of operations of SOEs?
There are.
Okay.
There are SOEs that are created to make profits, but there are SOEs who can be created for a pure service purpose. Okay. So in other words, you may not expect such an SOE to make money, but rather focus on pure service delivery. Now, in an ideal world, you want that to happen for them to break even. But if that cannot happen, then government would have to make a decision as to what level of subsidy it needs to provide to ensure the SOE can provide. A classic example is portable water. Now, portable water in certain contexts is viewed as a human right. So you don't necessarily need to make a profit delivering portable water to a population. Now, if government makes a policy decision that they want portable water to be delivered, then they need to decide together with NAWEC or whoever delivers water that, look, we will create a subsidy component to allow you to deliver this service in a manner that doesn't inhibit your organization. And there are many other examples of instances where government might decide to actually take responsibility for a particular component of service or human protection for the population. And that can be tasked to an SOE to deliver that service. But now, when that happens, we will build the right indicators to be cognizant of that fact.
But in the Gambia, all the SOEs are supposed to make profit? Or do we have any that is
pretty much yes.
To provide service?
Pretty much, yes. Pretty much. They're all designed to make a profit. So that is why the minister makes the point that I want a return for my investment. Now, that request has been made to us, that we have made this investment, we want a return for the investment. Now, obviously, we want to be fair to the SOEs. Okay. So we want to understand their context, the realities that they're dealing with. So there are inherent difficulties within the SOEs that are of a historical date. So we need to pull all that out, have the right conversations, and see how we deal with some of these bottlenecks that the SOEs face. And once we evacuate those, we will then be in a position to say, okay, you now have the right instruments to deliver the service. It must be delivered. But that is a conversation that we're currently having. There are discussions with several SOEs to look at some of the historical issues they face, some of the historical challenges they face, and the impact they have had progressively over time, and try to see how to deal with that. And once we clear those, then I think the environment would be there for us to demand performance and results that are profitable for government, and by extension, the nation at large.
Well, viewers, you are watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliu Sise, your host for this weekly State of Affairs program, where we discuss issues in the country, of course, looking at the state of affairs of institutions that are established to provide services to the country, but equally, looking at the political situation in the country and outside of the country. This program is aired every Tuesday at 9 p.m. and then repeated on Sunday at 10 a.m. here on QTV Gambia. And if you missed any of our episodes, you can always visit our YouTube channel at QTV Gambia, where all our episodes are uploaded for those who couldn't follow the program here on QTV Gambia. Like I said, our guest this week is Mr. Usain Ngam, who is the chair of the Regulatory Commission on the State-Owned Enterprises. You mentioned about, most of the SOEs in the country are established to make profit. When you talk about commissions, I'm sure most of the people who are watching are asking, when you talk about commissions, your mind will go to the TRRC, the local government commission. I really want to know, does your commission also carry out activities like the same way we are seeing other commissions, like parading witnesses before camera and all those things, just for the sake of those who are watching?
No. I think the use of the term commission yes. is just a coincidence.
I'm sure someone watching will be there's another commission for SOEs. Exactly.
We are not a commission of inquiry, nor are we an investigative commission.
Okay, good.
What we really are is completely different from a commission. Okay. What we are really is it's if you will look at the business world, you would term us. I mean, the minister likes to use this, a fund manager. We are basically tasked with protecting government's investment in SOEs.
Okay.
That is our task. And the reason why it's called a commission, I guess, is just a want of a term, but we really aren't a commission. We're a regulatory body. We're an oversight body. But an oversight body with a difference in that we're also expected to bring expertise into the arena and actually make suggestions as to how we think SOEs can be better run. I mean, and this is done bilaterally with the boards, because the core responsibility of overseeing each and every SOE is its board of directors. Our task is to help generate a return for government. So we operate at a slightly higher level than boards.
Okay.
We're looking at a much more strategic approach to running SOEs. If you wanted a term, we take a helicopter view.
Okay.
So we take an overarching view of all the SOEs and ask ourselves, as I gave you the example of our budget deficit, how do we get to a point where state-owned enterprises are seen as a contributory body to the larger economy? I mean, that is the objective. And it is possible. If you look at some of the other economies that are doing well, there are economies that are doing very well where state-owned enterprises are the key drivers of the economy. Singapore is a classic example. And we can replicate that. We have the skill sets, we have the manpower, we have the people, and we have the confidence and energy to push in that direction. And I think it's very credible of government, particularly the head of state, to say, look, okay, I will cede my responsibilities to a commission to perform tasks that I used to perform. That is really quite progressive. Now, there are accountability mechanisms between us and them, where we will report and they will ask questions. But by and large, we have been given a mandate to operate independently and freely, so that we actually replicate the same and give the boards adequate independence, and also encourage the boards to give SOE management teams adequate independence and freedom to be creative, to run their entities, to manage and deliver results, and just ensure that there are accountability mechanisms to check that and track it.
Do you have an office where you report to every day?
Currently, we are operating from the offices of the Directorate of State-owned Enterprises, but over time we will have our own office space where we will be located.
So how has the SOEs been cooperating with the Commission? I'm sure sometimes it's difficult. I mean, during your inauguration, you said you are not here to witch hunt or to create any problem for any SOEs, but you just want to see all the SOEs improved. How are they responding?
I must say we have been pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
The management teams and the boards of SOEs, we have met every one of them. Okay. We have had introductory conversations where we have set the scene, explain our mandate, what we intend to do, listen to them, understand their context, listen to their realities, the challenges they are facing. And together we are building a relationship that is open and collaborative, but actually quite robust, and ensures that we each achieve what we set out to achieve. You know, our success depends on SOE's success. Okay. If SOEs don't succeed, we wouldn't succeed. But we have a 3-year mandate, and at the end of the 3-year mandate, we will be asked the question, what did you do? What did you deliver? And then we have made this clear to SOEs, but they have been very receptive. In fact, I mean, the SOE management teams have been pretty progressive in the way they have approached us. I mean, they have been very collaborative. We've completed the budget exercise where we've reviewed budgets and approved them, and it's been a very friendly environment, a lot of mutual respect, but we have been able to do the job and get to a point where budgets are set, and we are now monitoring those as we go in.
And now let's look at these two SOEs, for example, the Gambia Post Authority and NAWEC. What is your understanding of their current state of affairs?
To be honest, both are loss-making at the moment.
Okay.
And that is quite worrying.
Oh.
NAWEC turns over in excess of $10 billion and still makes a loss. The Gambia Port Authority turns over close to $2 billion and still makes a loss. Now, there are inherent structural problems that cannot be resolved overnight. Okay. But we have started by looking at some of the key issues that we need to address within them. As part of this budget approval process, it's a lot of detail that I can't possibly elaborate on here. But we have sort of looked at where are the key cost drivers within these organizations, and which are the cost drivers that can be brought back. And there are quite a few I must be honest, there are quite a few significant cost drivers, both within NAWEC and GPA, that we can pull back. There are performance areas that can improve. Now, we have had those conversations with them. And, we're building on that, both within the performance contract and within the budget approval process, as two tools that we're using with them to find a way of bringing them back, at least in the immediate short term, to break even, and over the medium and long term, turn profitable. It's not an overnight task. It will take time, but certainly there are the right conversations happening, and there is the right understanding and the right environment at the moment. But yes, they are loss-making at the moment with significant challenges. And we are looking at those with them to ensure that we deal with as many as possible in the time that we have.
Well, viewers, that's Hussein Ngom, Chair of the State-Owned Enterprise Regulatory Commission. He's our guest this week. We'll go for a short break, and when we return, discussion continues. Do stay tuned.
Ask for it, and QCell is giving it to you with our new and improved Sunyu Bundle Mega Promo. Now you can get more data at cheaper prices. Buy any of our bundle packages and enjoy massive discounts. Dial *303# and enjoy browsing on the network with the biggest coverage. Buy a 20 megabytes data bundle for as low as $7 and 50 bottles today, or purchase bigger bundles up to 20 gigabytes. Yes, that's right, 20 gigabytes of data at your fingertips. With our mega promo bundles, you can browse more, chat longer, and stay connected on the go, anytime, anywhere. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell. We innovate. Orders follow. Terms and conditions apply. Looking for the perfect place to promote your product or place your advert? Look no further than QTV. We are the premier destination for businesses looking to connect with Gambian audiences and beyond. At QTV, we offer a variety of advertising solutions to suit your needs and budget. With our diverse range of programming, you can be sure that your ad will reach a broad and engaged audience. From our popular news broadcast to our exciting music and entertainment programming, QTV has something for everyone. QTV, the premier destination for advertising in the Gambia. Contact us today and let us help you reach your audience.
Hello viewers, welcome back from that short break. You're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Alusi, your host for this weekly State of Affairs program. Our guest this week is Mr. Hussein Ngom, who is the chair of the State-Owned Enterprises Regulatory Commission, established by the government to help improve efficiency in the SOEs. I mean, before we go on the break, we were talking about issue of NAWEC and of course, Gambia Post Authority. I mean, when you talk to many people, they're like, it's about time now we have a division between the water division and, of course, the electricity division of NAWEC to at least decouple them into two different directories. I mean, your take?
Yes, I mean, I have had those ideas put forward. Now, NAWEC is quite huge. Okay. NAWEC is doing everything on its own, generating electricity, selling electricity, distributing electricity, and all the associated functions. Now, that can be quite a huge task for one entity. Now, over time, maybe that is something that will be explored to see how do you make NAWEC more efficient? Okay. How do you make NAWEC better performing? And within that, we will certainly look at electricity generation, supply and distribution, and many other things. Now, NAWEC at the moment is buying in most of the power it's selling, a significant amount of it. Now, over time, they hope to wean themselves of that and generate their own energy through renewables and alternative sources.
How long will it take?
Well, NAWEC have a very robust plan in place to get to a point where they're delivering an effective service. But that plan has been for eternity. You know, any Gambian, no matter what age you are, have been experiencing poor electricity supply for a very long time. There is the will in government to change that, which is why they have opened it up to ensure that, you know, independent power suppliers can sell to NAWEC, and NAWEC can buy and supply. So these are all baby steps towards the bigger goal, but they are steps nonetheless. And what we need to do, as as a collective, ourselves, and I mean the citizens need to continue clamoring for an effective, efficient service for which they pay. I mean, they're not paying their money for nothing. So our task is to engage NAWEC. Now, NAWEC has a plan in place to get to that point, but there isn't much patience for that at the moment. Everybody wants things to happen overnight. So as a commission, we are conscious of that, and we are currently engaging NAWEC in detailed discussions about having a very clear roadmap. They have a roadmap, certainly, but ensuring that the necessary bits and pieces are in place to deliver it for once. Now, this is a huge task for us because we're in the process of negotiating a new performance contract with NAWEC. That process has just started. We're at the initial stages. And what we want to ensure that built into that performance contract are all the issues that you're asking. Have a monitoring system to see, is there a case for decoupling NAWEC in the long term, in the medium to long term? If so, what would that look like? What would be the necessary building blocks you need to put in place? Because electricity and energy generation is a key strategic asset. Currently some people will argue that energy is a security issue. You don't want to be buying all your energy from an outsider. Because, should they pull out tomorrow, they leave you with quite a significant problems. I mean, I'm sure government is quite conscious of that and has a strategy in place to ensure that we are self-sufficient in energy and generate our own. Now, it may not be NAWEC as it is currently configured who can give us that. And that is not a taboo conversation. People are having that conversation quite openly. And ourselves as a commission will engage NAWEC and other stakeholders, its ministry and broadly government to see, is there a way we can do this better? As I say, it's quite progressive really from the executive to delegate that task elsewhere and say to the commission, take on that responsibility and give us advice. Now, it's not our job to make policy. That certainly is the ministry's responsibility. But we can input into that policy making to ensure that the right policies are in place.
But the commission is not in most of these institutions. So how do you monitor their daily activities, their daily operations in these SOEs? I mean, you talk about the losses that they are making. Someone watching will perhaps attribute it to financial mismanagement, corruption, misappropriation, and all those stuff. How do you monitor to ensure that they're able to make a good return?
That we do through the board.
Okay.
The board of SOEs. And that is why it is our responsibility to ensure that proper boards are put in place. Okay. So you recruit people with the right competencies, people with the right skill sets who can oversee the work of the SOE. And we then interface with that board to ensure that they are guaranteeing or they are making sure that performance, delivery, and all the other expectations are happening. So our interface is the board. The board has the primary responsibility to ensure that SOE functions. Now, one of the criticisms that SOE boards have faced is that there haven't been boards that are adequately resourced to do that job. Now, our task, one of the expectations of the Act, is that we advise the executive to appoint the right people in the right places within the boards, and therefore be able to hold them accountable. Now, we will create our own accountability mechanisms between ourselves and the boards to ourselves, so that we're able to monitor, and where that is not happening, take appropriate action to rectify what may or may not be working.
And when it comes to the issue of social security, what have you found out?
Well, social security is a very cash-rich institution.
Okay.
But our hope is that we can engage social security in some form of modeling. Okay. Because the significant component of this population is quite young. So currently, social security are collecting a lot of money for which they have liability in 20, 30 years' time. So they may appear cash-rich, but in reality they're not. It's just that the acceleration of pension payments has not yet peaked. But we will get to a point where it will peak. So what we want to do is to engage them to have an adequate treasury planning system that predicts what that peak will be, and then create the right investments to build towards that. Now, it's not only good enough. I mean, there are experts in this area who can probably explain this better. But our task is to ensure that there is adequacy in the level of return being generated at the moment and be able to model going forward how do you accelerate and grow that return over time. Because the pension payments are going to accelerate as time goes on. This population is quite young at the moment. The average age is about 30, 35. So they're all still contributing. But they will get to a point where all these people will retire and you will need to be able to pay. So Social Security must not be viewed as a cash cow. It is not. It may at one particular point generate a lot of liquidity, but that liquidity is for a responsibility in the future. So our task is to create that mindset of investing in a very robust manner to anticipate the future liability. Now that includes quite a number of things. But pension fund management is quite a sophisticated task at the moment. And there are a lot of resources and tools and resource persons who will help in doing that sort of task. Now, one of the things that the Commission is going to really invest itself heavily on is to bring Gambian resource persons who are subject matter specialists in these areas to really sit with us and give us a perspective of what can we do, how can we do this better. Because there is a huge resource pool in this country that is not being tapped. And that may be because people are not open to allowing contributions to be made. We are not knowledgeable in all the areas. We are not experts in everything. We don't have all the ideas. So our task is to create that basis to pull in all these resource persons to help us. Either we put them in the boards or we bring them in as resource persons within the Commission to help us think through some of these ideas.
So what determined whether SOE should be privatized? I mean, the issue of NAWEC comes to play here. Many people are thinking, okay, why not we even privatize NAWEC or even have private investors investing in the energy sector? So what determined how or when SOE should be privatized?
That's a much wider decision. Okay. Government's primary task with the SOE is to have them generate a return. Okay. But alongside that is to manage a potential fiscal risk that they may pose. Now, if you can imagine SOEs generating losses in the region of 5-6 billion, that will be more than the current budget deficit. Government certainly does not want that. But if that becomes the norm and becomes inherent, then that is structurally a fiscal problem for the nation and something will have to be done. And in cases like that, the Commission is mandated to look at restructuring, potentially privatizing, and selling of assets, selling of the entire entity over time. Now, it will depend on what risk they pose. So there's a whole risk matrix that the Commission will develop to be able to track and monitor SOE performance. And if we feel that there is a structural fiscal risk within an SOE, then we will make the necessary recommendations, which may include privatizing them. Okay. And take off that responsibility from government.
Interesting. But in this case, I mean, we talk about issue of course, privatizing. But aside from that, where does your mandate ends? Does it go to the extent of recommending the sacking of a managing director, for instance?
Yes, we can recommend through the performance contract. Okay. I mean, there's a clear accountability tool for the managing director and us, through which we can make recommendations that have a basis. And the basis would be our own assessment of performance or our own assessments of other criteria within the performance contract, to which we then make a recommendation to the executive to take action. Now, the executive may or may not accept our recommendation. That is their prerogative. But we certainly can make recommendations for both boards and management teams within SOEs. But it will be based on very clear criteria that is traceable, that can be checked, so that us too, we don't abuse the powers that we have been given. Because really our task is to improve performance. Our task is not anything else other than working together with senior management teams to make them do a better job.
Okay. And what are the plans for the ferries? I mean, it looks they are also heavily subsidized.
Well, if you talk to the management team of ferries, they also have a case to present in that the tariffs are not commercially viable. Okay. The tariffs they are charging do not generate an adequate enough income for them to be profitable. And there are several layers of users of the ferries who are sometimes not paying at all, sometimes paying a reduced rate, and so on and so forth. It is a heavily overstaffed entity. So structurally there are problems. But they do have a very good management team in place now who understand what the challenges are, and they are making quite constructive and progressive proposals towards getting it to a point where ferries is at least breaking even. Now, the engineering side of ferries, I am not the best person to explain, but clearly there is an engineering problem because the ferries don't last very long. You know, Kunta Kinte, I remember, was in 2017, and already it's a problematic ferry. So there is definitely a case for looking at asset management, you know, maintenance routines and so on and so forth. So these are things that as a commission we can anecdotally suggest to ferries, and if necessary bring in a subject matter specialist into the commission to actually educate us on how can this be done better or how can it be done differently so that we get a service delivered that is fit for purpose.
And let's now, I just want to sound your opinion here, your views about the sale of 60% of Gamcell. What's your take on this?
Well, okay, let's contextualize that.
Exactly.
My understanding is that this was a decision made in 2019, but it wasn't implemented. And Cabinet has made the decision to implement that decision. Now, the basis for that decision, I am not privy to. We have asked the question to the minister ourselves that what was the basis for this decision, and the minister
they're on the verge of bankruptcy.
That in 2019 a decision was made to sell 60% of Gamtel, and all we are doing now is to make that real. Now, there are issues in Gamtel, without a doubt. It has its own problems. But as I say, everything requires a context. You know, if you ask the management team of Gamtel, they will give you their own context and the reasons why they are where they are. Now, our task is to be able to listen to all of this and make an informed judgment of what is the best decision to make within this total context. And we hope to do that responsibly so that we are representing citizens, really, who are the key constituency in this. These institutions are owned by us, the taxpayers, and the broader Gambian citizenry. So it should deliver a service for us. Now, certainly the president is tasked with holding that responsibility on our behalf. But I'm sure that every Gambian is entitled to ask the question, why are these SOEs not performing? That is why we're hoping to have a front-facing commission so that we also issue a public report as to the work we have done so that people can also critique the work we are doing. You know, because as I say, we don't have a monopoly on the ability to do this job. There are probably 1,000 Gambians who can do the job I am doing. So I need to be conscious of the fact that I am fortunate to be in the seat, but I need to be adequately responsible and accountable to the broader population.
And let's look at the performance of GIA as a commission. Yes. Now, are you impressed with the performance of GIA?
GIA is an entity for which I was chair before I moved to I moved to the commission. Yes. So I
hope you'll be able to comment.
I am probably conflicted, but I mean, let me situate it for you. Now, GIA core income generating tool is ground handling. That's where they generate their core income. I mean, and I'm sure you know that ground handling has recently been liberalized. And there are two entities now offering the service. So now, naturally, GIA's income is going to be diluted. Now, if GIA experiences a diluted income, obviously their performance is going to fall. Now, in negotiating their performance contract, we have factored that in to say that you are in a new context where the service that gave you the best resource is now liberalized. Therefore, there will be consequences, and these are the scenarios that we are anticipating if that happens. Now, as an entity, traditionally, they have done a good job of ground handling, because you've got to understand the architecture of the airport. GIA is only one part of the airport, and their part is purely service delivery. They offer ground handling, passenger services, primarily is what they do, and you know, crew transfer, moving the crew. Now, the rest of the airport infrastructure is handled by civil aviation. So many people tend to critique GIA for the failings or the challenges at the airport, but it's not their sole responsibility. Now, government has gone a further step now. They are trying to do what we call decoupling. If we break that down, civil aviation, who actually currently has a regulatory function, as well as the task of running the airport. Now, these two are going to be separated. So civil aviation will only be performing a regulatory function, and running the airport as a business will be decoupled. Somebody else will be doing it. Now, that's a policy decision, and government will decide who will be doing that. But GIA primarily focuses on the service end. And they do a good job, but that is going to be challenged now with the liberalization. So they are going to need to look at that together with government, because they are a government-owned entity. So government will need to look at the implications of this decoupling and the revenue dilution that GIA is going to suffer.
So how much is the funding? I mean, in terms of funding, perhaps some of the SOEs might blame, I mean, the poor performance to underfunding and all those things. Do you realize, or do you find out that, you know, there is any sort of underfunding for these SOEs?
Well, that is where I started. That is part of the conversation. Because this 34.5 billion you hear government talk about is an investment in SOEs, in terms of equipment, in terms of human resource, in terms of sometimes liquidity funding, and so on. Now, of course, senior managers will tell you that maybe I am not adequately resourced in this area, I'm not adequately, but these are all things that are going to be factored in the performance contract mechanism. So that if you make a case that I am not able to deliver service X because I am not adequately resourced to do so, we will ask you to make a business case. Give us the justifications. Why are you not able to deliver X with the resources you currently have? And if we find that there is a legitimate business case, then it will be looked at and the right recommendations made. If we feel that you don't have a legitimate business case, we will say so and say that no, these are not investment, these are not asset issues, these are performance issues, or these are management issues, or these are other issues. You know, leakages are happening elsewhere. Okay. It's not necessarily that you don't have the resource. So it's quite a detailed process. That's why the Commission has a technical arm, because we are going to have a technical team who will support our work. And they will do all this detailed work and interface with SOEs to give us the sort of information we need to make the right judgments.
So you're talking about, you know, you have experts, but share with us, what is the composition of this commission?
The composition of it. I mean, there are 6 commissioners.
I know there's a lawyer.
Yes, I mean, the government has, I mean, I must say the setup of the commission is quite progressive.
Yeah.
To start with, there are 3 men and 3 women. So there is gender equity. and even more interesting, the chair is male, myself, and the vice chair is female. So really, it's a well balanced. We have a lawyer in our midst. We have an accountant in our midst. We have a development expert in our midst. We have an engineer in our midst. We have a broad-based admin civil service person in our midst, and we have a human resource institutional development expert. So really, in terms of skill sets, we're adequately resourced. That was quite a good selection, really. So the commission is quite well structured in that sense. Now, it's up to us now to recruit the right team to complement the commissioners. And we are quite confident that we can do that.
And in this monitoring work, do you receive quarterly reports or annual reports?
Yes, the technical team led by the executive secretary, who you know you've interviewed before on this show, by Madisisa.
Yeah.
His task is to ensure that technical support base. So yes, they receive quarterly reports, they receive quarterly reviews, they receive reports on the performance contracts, and they do the detailed analysis and make recommendations to us. But they also interface with SOEs on a daily basis and bring to our attention issues that are critical, issues that are important, that require a much earlier intervention rather than, because you've got to remember, these reports are historical. Okay. So by the time you read them and understand what they're saying, the context has changed significantly. So there needs to be...
Just like in Parliament, some of them are giving us reports of 2021 financial reports.
Now, we don't want to do that.
2024.
We don't want to do that. We want to be more proactive than that. And really be able to have a snapshot of every SOE at every given time. So that, you know, we are not running after the SOE, but we are supporting them to be much more, you know, proactive, adaptable, and nimble in their processes. Because, you know, the business world is not going to wait for anybody. Yeah. The world in general today, it's so disruptive. It's not going to wait for anybody. So you need to be able to respond rapidly. So what we are trying to do is to create that basis to really interact with the SOEs on an ongoing basis, so that we are cognizant of their realities on a daily basis. Now that's quite challenging to do, but it's something that we are quite confident that we can create the right instruments to get that going.
And talking about having efficient institutions, will you also be looking at the issue of staffing? Because we understand some of these SOEs are overstaffed as well.
Well, it's a collective. You know, we are not going to be looking at which parts of the pie we're going to to try and chip at. We are looking at the whole.
Okay.
If we feel that the inherent structural problem is an overstarving issue, then we will address ourselves to that. If we feel that there's a huge administrative burden, then we will address ourselves to that. If we feel that you're underperforming, because it's all about the income stream you generate relative to the costs you incur. You want the income stream to significantly outweigh the cost. But at the moment, it is true that most SOEs have an admin overhead burden of almost 60%, which is not appropriate. That needs to be pulled back. And in fact, part of the budget approval process this year, we made sure that in as much as possible, we pull back as much as we could. Now, we don't want to do that in a way that strangles any SOE or prevents them from being able to run day to day. But certainly, staffing can be part of that problem. Other costs, asset purchase, general admin, procurement, the issues are many. But whatever it is, our ambition is to isolate it and deal with it.
And our review highlights multiple historic, instances where, of course, earlier you mentioned about the, government interferences here and there. Having requests, executive directives, get us this amount of money and all those things. How are we going to deal with this to ensure that there is no political interferences here and there?
Sure. That is why I said to you earlier that what we want to do is to give boards enough autonomy, and by extension, those boards give management enough autonomy to do their jobs.
But at the end of it, the board is also much more interested in staying in office. And
it's up to us to take the cue.
Okay.
In a way, the president has given the cue. He has said, I will cede my responsibilities to a commission. Mm-hmm. So it's up to us to take that and do the job without necessarily going back every day and asking him, what do we do? Now, if there are issues of other arms of government interfering, people need to have the confidence to say, no, this is not part of your brief. This is not what you should be doing. I am doing my job. I think the environment exists for that. What we need to do is to build the confidence of people to be able to look at issues and say, no, this is not adequate, and give the right advice. Ultimately, of course, we have an executive presidency, ultimately, and cabinet can make decisions in terms of what they see as being beneficial for the country. And that will then have to be implemented by the technical teams that support them. But certainly, one can make the advice, can give the advice that I don't think this is the right decision to make, and these are my reasons. And they will look at that objectively and come back. I don't think there's any reason why one cannot do that. Certainly, the environment that we are operating in at the moment, I don't see any reason why, if we have a different view, we cannot advance it.
So are you also going to work on having a unique policy that's going to guide all these SOEs, even in terms of pay scales and all those things?
Well, yes.
Perhaps, what Social Security is paying the head, maybe GI is not paying that.
Already in the budget approvals this year,
okay,
we have already told all SOEs that they should not increase their salaries, because we are looking at it, we are doing a broad-based review to see how we can ensure that there's equity in reward within the SOEs. Now, they're not all going to earn the same thing. Yeah. They will be tiered. Okay. There are certain SOEs that are generating a significant return who may earn higher, a middle tier and a lower tier. Yeah. But it will be based on a proper review, a very participatory questionnaire to determine what is the adequate level of reward that is commensurate with the task you are performing. So that will be done to ensure that, there is no arbitrary, reward mechanism being put in place by any management team or board. There will be a clear basis for setting reward within SOE.
Finally, what do you hope to achieve in the first 6 months of your operation?
In as much as we can, to create budgets that make sure SOEs break even and get away from a loss-making perspective. Now, it's been a tough task trying to do that. Some are still coming and querying some of the budget recommendations we've made, and we have been very open to say, yes, come back. Why do you think we are wrong? Why do you think we shouldn't do that? And have that conversation. Because really, that's our task. If everything is on the table, then you should be able to see it and discuss it. And that's what we are trying to ensure, that we do everything above board, so that you can critique what we are doing, but we will then be able to say to you, okay, you've had your chance. We don't think what you are saying holds water, therefore, or we think, yes, you have a point, we will review our own position, and so on. And really, that is my hope, that as a whole, ourselves, government, SOEs, we have that relationship where we're able to converse and you know, get to the right place together.
Thank you so much, Mr. Usain Ngom, who is the chair of the State-Owned Enterprises Regulated Commission established by the government through the Ministry of Finance to help, I mean, as the government said, unlock the hidden potentials in the SOEs. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of the State of Affairs program. I was your host, Ali Sise, on behalf of the production team and everyone here at QTV. We thank you so much for watching and do join us next week. Until then, bye-bye.